Okay, well, I am delighted to say that on the Godcast today, we are joined by a former professional footballer for Burnley and Bolton Wanderers and Colne Dynamoes, and retired policeman, and now working in the funeral sector, Derek Scott. Derek, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alex.
How are you today? Okay?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, it's a peaceful Saturday.
There's not much footy knocking around today, is there? It's very quiet.
It is, obviously, with the internationals happening, it's all gone quiet on the domestic front.
Yeah. Okay, well, I've got some questions lined up for you. I think the first thing I want to know is if I could ask you this, Derek, is that I think every kid who loves football grows up dreaming that one day they might actually make the grade and live out that dream and be a professional footballer. And you are what I would describe as one of a select group of people that actually did that and did that at a very high standard. When you were a boy, what was the dream? And looking back, do you think you lived it?
Well, looking back over the years, being from the Northeast, everybody has the ambitions to play for the hometown club. And for me as a youngster, it was Newcastle United. That didn't happen, of course, for various reasons, one of which is Burnley. That's why I'm still here. But the dream was fulfilled. I came down to Burnley at the age of 16, signed as an apprentice, and then went on from there.
What was that like, Derek? That idea of moving away from home to come to Burnley. Were you excited or were you quite fearful?
I was very excited because actually I've been involved with the club since I was 13. I came down as a schoolboy and basically settled in because there was a lots of people from the Northeast down here. I came down with a guy called Ray Hankin, who's a couple of years older than me, and of course went on to play first team football at Burnley and Leeds. And I ended up coming down, staying in various hotels when I was coming down during school holidays. And then 12 months before I came to Burnley, I went and stayed in my digs that I was there until I got married. And my digs partner was Ian Brennan, who was the left back at Burnley at the time. And I was very lucky that I settled in very quickly.
Was Burnley always going to be the option, or were there other opportunities?
As I said, Newcastle was an option. I went down to West Bromwich and Arsenal and things like that. But the biggest thing for me was coming to Burnley. It was like coming from home. There was a lot of people here, as I said, from the Northeast, which was down from the manager, Jimmy Adamson, and then you had Dave Blakey, who was the chief scout, of course, and other Geordies that were here playing at the time, Colin Morris and people like that. So to help you settle in, and also it was very difficult different setup at Burnley than it was at the other clubs. Everybody trained together. So as a schoolboy at 13, it was very exciting for me to be playing and training with people like Frank Casper and Colin Waller and Martin Dobson and Dave Thomas and people like that, right from an early age, and you learn very quickly. So it was different in that respect.
So just 13, that's quite young, isn't it? So was it way before that people were kind of making noises about your potential? Was it kind of 9, 10? What kind of age was it people started thinking that you could make the grade?
It was probably 11, 12 years of age. The scouting system in those days was vast. It was obviously it's different now because of the Premier League, but in those respects, Burnley were very, very renowned for the scouting system throughout the country and getting talent to the club. Because obviously the club was a selling club at the time and they sold people on. But the settling thing for me is when I came to Burnley was the aspects of being made to feel part of it straight away. And once my mind was made up, I didn't want to change it from there.
No. And just before that, kind of growing up in the Northeast, what was the family background like? Was there any church connections as a boy or not?
Well, funnily enough, there was, because I was a member of the Boys Brigade in those long days ago. And one of the obviously things that we had to do, we had to go to Sunday school on Sunday mornings. And I went there for quite a number of years until obviously the situation was where I was playing football a lot of the time and you didn't get to go to the Boys Brigade because you were doing other things.
No. Were your parents from quite religious or not?
Not really. But to be fair, they did say if you want to do your additional things with the boys' brigades, then you're going to have to go. So they made you go.
Yeah.
So they were quite strict with that side of it.
It was very much the same for me as a kid growing up in Westthorne. Was like, if you go to Cubs, you've got to go to the family parade, and at which point I was kicked out, which was because I didn't want to go to church, and some years later I ended up taking a service of Holy Communion up at Westthorne, which was completely surreal after being kicked out of the Cubs. But anyway, that's another story. So when you look back at those formative years as a footballer, are there any people that stick out as role models and people that you still hold in the highest regard now?
Well, I mentioned the person before, Martin Dobson. I hold that guy in the highest esteem. Funnily enough, as I work in the funeral industry now, we did a funeral for a chap over in Clitheroe, and his name was Dobson. And I wondered whether this chap was going to be related to Martin. And funnily enough, when we turned up in the cars, it was Martin's brother, so he was actually there.
Really? Gosh.
Yeah, so that was only a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. But I still have the highest esteem for that man. He was our captain, our leader. He led the younger players very well, set examples that you try to maintain. It was very difficult because of the standards he played at. But as a person, he was an exceptional person, held in high esteem by everybody.
Yeah. Who were the managers kind of when you were starting there? Who was Harry Potts around in those days?
Well, when I first signed at Burnley, Jimmy Adamson was the manager then. And down the years, obviously the faces changed. Joe Brown took over from him. And then Harry Potts came, of course. And my father-in-law, Brian Miller, then became manager. Succeeded after that by Frank Casper. I played under a few people at that place. And then, of course, John Bond came. And John Benson, who was my last manager, and I left and went to Bolton Wanderers then.
Yeah. John Bond is obviously the name that kind of everybody associates with the demise of Burnley. Do you put it down to him, or was it something else, do you think?
I don't think you can put it down to one person, because there's lots of things involved with running a football club. But obviously he came to the place from a big city club in Manchester City, and tried to impose on our club the same beliefs that they had as a city club, and it just doesn't work at Burnley. But in defence of the man, I've got to say, as a coach, I learned he was second to none. As a coach on the training ground, he was really, really good. But as a manager and a person to deal with face to face, he wasn't the best.
No, I remember vaguely as a young lad, everybody was raving when he took over, because some of these big names like Tommy Hutchinson and Jerry Gow and Steve Daly came into the club, and I think everybody was excited, but it just turned quite sour, didn't it?
Yeah, Tommy Hutch, to be fair, was a great signing for Burnley. I thought he played some great stuff when he was here. Unfortunately, when they signed Kevin Reeves was already injured when he came to Burnley, and he only lasted 6 or 7 months, and he, of course, had to retire. But if you weren't part of the City setup, then he didn't really want to entertain you, John Bond. It was a case of that. It was definitely them enough situation at that time.
Yeah. And a player that I remember as a boy and was really disappointed that he left was Trevor Stephen. Was he around when you were at the club, or was that after your time? Or
well, funnily enough, when Trevor started as a 17-year-old, his first ever appearance in the first team, he came on as substitute for me.
Really?
So yes, I was around, and Trevor was my roommate occasionally. Now, he was obviously destined for greater things because of the ability that he had, and that was proven. Going on to play in World Cups and winning league championships and stuff like that with Everton and Rangers and over in France. I don't know what he's doing. I do know that he was a soccer agent at one point. He does quite a lot of media work abroad for Eurosport and things like that still.
Yeah, he was a great player, wasn't he?
Oh, it's outstanding. There's just certain people that you can tell are going to be, go up to a higher level and play quite a long time at that level.
What is it, Derek, that sets them apart? Is it the brain? Is it just natural ability? Is it fitness? What do you think it is?
Well, I think a lot of it is down to the natural ability and how you best use that natural ability. And Trevor he was very single-minded as what he wanted to achieve, and he went a long way and achieved what he did. So as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't surprised that he did.
Yeah. Okay.
But that was instigated by Martin Dobson. He ended up going to Everton, and obviously Martin was our captain when Trevor was playing there, and that's how he ended up going to Everton.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to take you back, Derek, to my first ever game going on Turf Moor. I'm going to see if you can tell me what it was. You played in it. It was on the 12th of September in 1978, and I was 9. And my dad dragged me off after about 60 minutes saying, "You're never coming in here again." Have you any idea what game that might have been, Derek?
I've no idea, Alex. I'm sure you'll enlighten me.
I am going to enlighten you, Derek. It was the Anglo-Scottish Cup match against Celtic at Turf Moor. Do you remember that game?
Yes, I do remember that. I do remember that very well. Yes, it was. It was one of the. Funny enough, I'm still connected to the club, and I do match day tours on the games and stuff. And one of the stories I tell is about the Celtic game, and that's the first time I'd ever appeared at Turf Moor, and it was like playing in an away game because the whole ground was more or less green and white. And of course, the situation of the riot and stuff, it was well documented. We got took off the pitch, and then they got things calmed down after half an hour. And unfortunately for me, I was playing down the right-hand side where most of their supporters were in the old long side, and there was chunks of glass on the pitch, and then we still played and got it done. But unfortunately, it was going along swimmingly until Steve Kindon scored. Everybody was happy and singing and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, Steve scored, and then the rest's history after that.
Yeah. For people who are watching this who aren't aware, there used to be this cup tie between English and Scottish teams, and Burnley won it that year. We won it, didn't we?
We did win it, yeah. The Celtic game was, I think it was the quarterfinals, and we beat them at home 1-0, and then we had to go back. We had to go up to Scotland the week after and play the second leg, which was quite daunting, to be honest with you. But we managed to win up there as well, so that was quite good. We beat them convincingly. So for a week, we were champions of the United Kingdom because Scotland, because Celtic were the Scottish champions at the time.
Yeah, my old man who's passed away now, he was a Cockney. "We never come in here again, Alex." No, but I did and still do. So there we are.
Many do that, Alex. Football's a religion to many people in this town.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's true, and it is across the world. We went to Spain a couple of years ago, and I was lucky enough to visit the Barcelona Nou Camp, and I couldn't believe that they actually had a chapel in the in the tunnel there. There's actually a chapel, and I was like, gosh, but there is definitely a spiritual connection between football and fans and football and players, isn't there?
Yes, you're very lucky. I've never been to that stadium, but my other half, she went to Barcelona with some friends, and she actually wanted to go on the stadium tour, one of the few that did, and she really enjoyed it. So I'm a bit jealous of that.
It is an incredible place. It is. I just want to move on to how it all ended at Burnley for you in terms of your playing career, Derek. How did that come about?
Well, I'd been there, obviously, since I was 16, and I got to the stage at 27 where it was a crossroads for me. I just needed a fresh challenge, to be honest with you. And I didn't envisage going anywhere at that time. But in the Easter time, just before when the transfer window was open at Easter, Bolton Wanderers came in for me before the season ended. And they tried to do a swap deal with Jeff Chandler, who was at Bolton at the time, coming to Burnley. And at that time, I said no. I actually went over and spoke to him over in Bolton, and I said no at the time. And then summer they came back again, and it just seemed the right time to make that move, and I did.
Yeah. And was Phil Neal the main manager during those days?
No, Phil Neal came about 6 months after I'd gone there. There was a guy called Charlie Wright, who was an ex-goalkeeper at Bolton, who was the manager. And his assistant was Walter Joyce, who was Warren Joyce's dad, and played at Burnley in the early 60s with my father-in-law. So I went over and spoke to them, and I was happy enough to say, well, I don't have to move from Burnley. I can still travel from here. My base will still be my hometown. Well, what was my adopted hometown. And I went over there and signed for them and spent three happy years there.
Yeah, but was when I was growing up, Liverpool were the kind of I mean, it's taken them a long time to get back to where they were, but they ruled the roost, didn't they, in the 80s, Liverpool? And Phil Neal was, as I say, Phil Neal was I think he's one of the most decorated footballers, wasn't he, in the country? What was he like, Derek?
I think he was at the time the most decorated player in the country. I think he's been surpassed by Ryan Giggs now, obviously with the Manchester United ex trophy winning years and stuff. Phil Neal came to Bolton about 6 months after I got there, and I was expecting more from him, to be honest. I thought with all his England experience and his European experience and stuff like that, it would be exciting. But it didn't turn out that way. I might be barking up the wrong tree, but I actually fell out with him towards the end of my career at Bolton. However, he didn't bear any grudges. He still made me captain of the team at the end of the season, so he didn't bear any grudges with that. So, I was thankful for that, really.
Yeah. And then, while I was looking, I just had a quick look on Wikipedia, and then Colne Dynamoes, which then you think, oh God, yeah, chalky white, Colne Dynamoes, but it doesn't have you playing any games. Did you play any games for Colne Dynamoes? Because on the Wikipedia it said
I spent. How long did I spend there? Two seasons at Dynamos. When they won the Northern Premier League and got, well, the first season they finished, I don't know where they finished, but the next season we won the championship. They went full time the year after, and they brought the guy in who was the Morecambe manager, Joe Bodjahovic, who came in and was the manager then. But then he signed all sorts of players. You had myself, Billy Rodaway, you had Alan Kennedy, who was at Liverpool, the left back there. There's a lot of league experience, and Graham ploughed a lot of money into it, to the stage where he'd got promoted and won the league and got promoted to the Football League, but the ground just wasn't up to standard, anywhere near standard. So, and shortly after that, he called a meeting on the pitch up at Holt House and just said, "I'm drawing a line under it, and that's it. It's being closed down." Gosh. That was all within a week or two after winning the league, So that came to an abrupt halt.
Yeah, where were you training with Dynamos, Derek? Where was you training?
We trained up at the ground. We trained up in Holt House. There's obviously lots of, I don't know whether you've actually been up there, but there's lots of playing around the area, and we used to train up there.
Yeah, I do know it, Derek. You won't know because you don't. But I used to be I am a Class 1 football referee. Actually, I was fully qualified, and I think I probably did I used to do quite a lot of trials matches down at Burnley, but I just struggled with my fitness really, so I never quite made it as far as I had hoped to. But had some wonderful experiences. And so Colne Dynamoes finishes, and then you're contemplating retirement, obviously. I hear so many stories about footballers that kind of just really struggle at the end of their football playing career, and some people are going to. In those days, the pub scene was very popular, wasn't it? Or Well,
that's right. I mean, the biggest example that we'd know, because obviously in our village in Worcester, Andy Lockwood was the licensee at the pub there for quite a long time. So Tommy Cummins, who was obviously in the great 60s side as well, he ended up being a landlord at the Shooters Arms in Nelson. Yeah. So the pub trade was one of the things that footballers went into. Unfortunately, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to experience other things. So first of all, when I actually finished, I went working for Samuel Cook's Oil Company in Padiham. A good friend of mine who was one of the directors there, so I worked there. And then after that, I did probably about 18 months at Kirk Scaffolds in Padiham. So I did a bit of scaffolding. That was all right. And then after that, I joined the police. And did that for almost 25 years.
Yeah. Did you find the break from football difficult, Derek, or was it all right for you?
No, it was all right because I carried on playing with Burnley Bancourt, where Ian Britton was the manager, and then at Dynamos as well. So I didn't miss it that much, but also I was involved with the Centre of Excellence down at Burnley. So I spent 3 years coaching with the kids down there, and took lads from 14 through 3 years of the development up to under 16 level, and then obviously working in the police, I just couldn't commit to it anymore. But I did enjoy doing that, so I didn't have a complete break from it. I was still involved in it.
Yeah. And then the police force came around. Had you been thinking about that for a while, or was it quite by chance, or how did that come around?
Well, I had thought about that when I'd finished at 30 years of age, but then by the time my 31st birthday came, I applied and I got rejected because there was an age limit on then. They actually had an age limit of 30, but I was 31, so I couldn't get in. And literally 12 months later, my wife said, "Oh, they've relaxed the age limit on the police. Why don't you reapply?" So I did, and I applied and got in at 32.
And when you became a copper, I mean, I saw you in Burnley. I do wonder what it was like for you, because you're one of those people, Derek, that played for Burnley and still live in the town. You know, people like Brian Flynn still knocking about, and my family were friends with Arthur Bellamy's family, and you know, you're in that group, aren't you, of ex-Burnley players that still are in the town. So when you became a copper, I guess you were spotted quite frequently, were you?
I was, and to be fair, one of the questions they did ask me when I got in the police was, "How would you feel about policing in your own town?" And I said, I don't have a problem with that. And there were lots and lots of situations that my former job, obviously playing at the football club and being involved in that side of it, helped me do the police job, because it brought situations down that might have ignited in other directions, and it opened doors for me for police work to go into the community and stuff like that. So it did help me in a big way, being involved at the football club and then working in Burnley as a police officer.
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who's called Richard Booth, who is a Baptist minister, who at the time...
I know Richard well.
Yeah, and he said, remember me to you, and he does. And he tells the story of the Baptist church on which is in our parish upon Rosehill Road. Friday nights were quite legendary, I believe.
That's right. I was the community police officer for Rosehill area, and I met Richard many years ago. And one of the community things that we got involved in, we had a lot of problems with youngsters roaming the streets and disturbing residents and stuff like that. And we set about setting up some sort of youth club at the Baptist church, and we got the kids involved by getting them to decorate and clean out the building and all that sort of thing. And it became their bastion to be there. And it cut down a lot of the problems that they were having of kids running around the streets. But even though it was just for a few hours on a Friday night, they were challenging at times, I must admit, as teenagers can be. But with a bit of patience or so, a lot of them weren't bad kids, really. If you got to grips with them, they tend to toe the line.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my church is just across the road from there, and you're absolutely right about the kids. They're not changed at all, but you know, there's some lovely kids around there. They just need some steering, a bit of direction. I love working around there. It's clear, Derek, for me that you're a bit like my old man. Actually, he came from down south, and you came from up north. But when he got to Burnley, there was never any prospect that he was going to leave. It's clear that you've got a real love and affinity for Burnley. Is that fair to say?
I have, and I still go home back to the northeast 2 or 3 times a year. But I regard this as my home now, because obviously I made my life here with my family. I married a Burnley girl. My lads both were born and grew up here, and all my friends are here. And with all due respect to the northeast, I couldn't go back there and live there full time now, because this is my home. I'm an adopted Lancastrian, so to speak.
Yeah, lovely. And then when the police force finished, and you know, I don't think there are many ex-footballers working in the funeral industry. How did that come around, Derek?
Well, fully enough, that was through a police colleague of mine as well, who was working full time for the company I work for now. And I just happened to have a conversation with Alan, and I said to him, I don't want to work full time. I just want to do it, on a casual basis. I've worn a full time t-shirt, and it was time to wind down a little bit. And I just said to him, I said, is there any chance of any casual work going there? and he made a few phone calls, and literally a day later, I went over to Blackburn for an interview, and I've been doing it ever since, just over 3.5 years now.
And do you enjoy it?
I do. It's I can pick and choose when I work. If I don't want to work next week, I don't have to. If I want to work every day, I can. But I do like the side of it where it's giving a service to people who've lost a loved one, and it's their last act to say goodbye to the loved ones, and you try and do the best you can to make the experience good for them in difficult circumstances.
It's a real privilege. I see it as a real privilege, actually, to kind of just walk with people in their kind of their darkest hour, and I think when you in the industry, as we both are now, people, you know, I can sometimes come and say to my, I've done a funeral today, as though it's just normal, but it's there's an interesting camaraderie, would you say, amongst the funeral fraternity, and there's a bit of a dark humour as well at times.
There is, but that's part and parcel of the enjoyment of the job, because one of the great things I always say is that if I don't enjoy something, I won't do it. If I stop enjoying it, then I won't do it. But I enjoy working with the people I work with, and I enjoy doing the job that I do and giving the service to people that you know they deserve. So as long as I enjoy that, I'll carry on doing it.
Yeah. Does it make you, just to go a little bit deeper, I don't want to go too deep on this interview, Derek, but does it make you contemplate things in any way? You know, does it make you think about death in a different way to maybe how you thought about it before?
Well, it does, because you see the ages of some of the people that have passed on, and you think, well, it's a little bit close to home. And at this moment in time, we my wife and I, we look after a 95-year-old gentleman became part of our family through my father-in-law, and he has no other family. So, and you think, well, he's 95 years and he's coming to the end of his end. You've got to try and do things and make things as easy as you can for him. But bearing in mind that I'm 62 years of age, and the years creep on you quite quickly, don't they? You know, so it's you just think about things in the future and how long you've got to go, so to speak. Yeah,
I think it's a good point. I certainly think about how quickly. I was watching last night Top of the Pops from 1990, and I was thinking to myself, crikey, that's a long time ago. But when I was watching it, it felt like yesterday. You know,
yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that with my lads. I mean, it doesn't seem 5 minutes. And I mean, I watch my grandson play football now, and he's 10, and it doesn't seem 5 minutes since I was watching Chris and Paul play football, and they're now 40 and 35 years of age. So, you know, you just think, where have those years gone?
Yeah. And has the grandson got any potential to make the grade, Derek?
He's got ability. That's all you can say at 10 years of age. He's got ability, and it's a very, very difficult thing to get into, to play professional football and actually make a career of it. So hopefully he'll carry on doing what he's doing, and if he's good enough, then he may get a chance to do it.
Yeah, I think people don't realise actually how tough it is. When I used to do some of the trials matches, I used to rest and watch players, and I think, God, they're fantastic. They're going to be superstars, and most of them don't make it. And I know a family, probably best not to say the name, but he was on the books at United, and he's recently stopped playing professionally. But he was the only one of that year group who was playing professionally into his kind of late 20s. He's not.
Yeah. It's not. It's football is very much like a conveyor belt, Alex. It's people get on at the start, and some people fall off after 2 years when their apprentices come to an end. Some people sign pro, and after 2 years as a pro, they fall off the conveyor belt, which is what my lads did. They were lucky enough to get to the end of apprenticeships, get signed professional, and play first team football at Burnley. But their time came to an end a couple of years after that. So, and some people like myself go on to 30 years of age, which was quite a long time. I spent 11 years in pro football. So people jump off that conveyor belt at different stages and go on to do other things.
Yeah. And to bring that kind of football story full circle, like you said, you're doing an ambassadorial role at Burnley, don't you, on match days? That must be enjoyable.
I really enjoy that. I've been doing that for just over 3 years. Obviously, with the COVID situation, there's nobody allowed there down at the ground. But on a match day, we meet and greet the people. We make them feel at home, which is what happens at our club anyway, because it's a family club. And I take them on a ground tour around the dressing rooms and things like that. And it's nice because at the end of it all, you get regular supporters, and they are just Burnley fans with a bit more money, if you understand what I'm saying, spending on a match day.
Yeah.
But they still appreciate the match day experience and want to be around the club itself.
Yeah. And your assessment of the club now, Derek? I mean, there's been a lot of stick, hasn't there, over the last few weeks because they've not spent any money, really. What's your take on that?
Well, people can give directors and all that sort of thing stick, but at the end of the day, we're now 6 years in the Premier League, and to maintain that in the Premier League in this day and age is absolutely outstanding. On the budget, we must have the lowest budget in the Premier League, and Sean Dyche and his staff have done an outstanding job to keep us where we are.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the directors, they get stick as well, but they have to cut the cloth. If you look at other clubs who've sold the souls, people like Sunderland and Blackburn and Bolton Wanderers and people like that, they sold the souls to stay there, and they've suffered since. And I don't think that we are going to be in that position because of good management.
Yeah. And just looking at that Burnley squad now, which kind of players stand out for you as your favourites and real top quality players that we've got there at the moment?
Well, I've been, obviously, Dwight McNeil's been at the top of the list over the last 12 months or so. But one of the people I really like watching who's improved a real lot since he came, and that's Charlie Taylor. I think he's been outstanding, and he's performed at a high standard quite consistently well.
Yeah.
And of course, our centre half that's valued highly is Mr. Tarkowski, but he had a bit of a dip, which is now he's got over and he's back to his best again.
Derek, my favourite player, and I think I get a lot of stick off my friends, is Chris Wood. I just think he's a top striker, but maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong or am I right?
No, you're not wrong, Alice, because various people get stick, don't they? And one of the people who got lots of stick over the last couple of years was Jeff Hendrick. Now, he's gone to Newcastle, and basically it showed how much he was missed, because supporters are talking about we shouldn't have let him go for a free. And Chris Wood, whatever people say about him, he was brought here from Leeds to score goals, and that's what he's done.
Yeah.
People are measured by what they do. It's no good paying X million pounds for a player who's brought to score goals and he doesn't do it. Chris Wood answers him by putting the ball in the back of the net all the time.
Yeah, he is a great finisher. I mean, he reminds me. I mean, he reminds me of Harry Kane. Maybe quite that level, but I just think he'd score goals wherever he was, really.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. Some people just have a knack of doing what they do, and wherever he's been, he's scored goals for the clubs he's played for.
Yeah. Derek, it's been really lovely talking to you. This 30 minutes has whizzed by. I just want to throw in a couple of random questions, silly ones, really. When I'm in the crematorium conducting a funeral, and you'll be aware of this, we get the playlist, don't we, of loved ones past, and it doesn't half make me contemplate what songs I might have at my own funeral. Is there a song that you want at your funeral? Have you not even thought about that yet?
No, I have actually. One of the songs I have is a Bee Gees song, and it's called "Morning of My Life." It's a very nice song. I don't know whether you've heard it, but it might be worth listening to. And I have to pick an Elvis song, which is "If I Could Dream," which is a really good song. Yeah. So I have thought about it, and the list is getting shorter.
Yeah. And what do you like to do when you're chilling out, Derek? When you're not working, and obviously you're kind of semi-retired. What do you enjoy? Are you one of these pro golfers, or?
No, I'm not a pro golfer. I'm a dog walker. I've got a cocker spaniel. I like going on long walks with him. And until recently, I've had a bit of a problem with my knee. But over the last 2 or 3 years, along with my friends and wife, and we've climbed Ben Nevis, climbed Snowdon and Scarfell Pike. So that was quite nice. But I like going on travelling. Unfortunately, that's now curbed at the moment. But that's one of my great loves.
Yeah. And do you keep in touch with any of those old footy mates of yours?
Well, I see Brian Flynn virtually every day because he only lives around the corner from me.
Tesco most weeks.
And also, I used to be in touch a lot with Peter Noble until he died, because he lives across the other estate. And I'm in constant touch with Ian Brennan on a regular basis. And until recently, we used to go out every 3 or 4 weeks for something to eat, just me and him on a Thursday afternoon. So yeah, we do keep in touch at times.
Yeah, lovely, Derek. Really lovely chatting to you. I want to thank you for memories you gave me as a Burnley fan. I want to thank you for your work as a Bobby, because I think the old Bill get a bit of a stake, but it's so needed and so appreciated. And thank you for your individual ministry with funerals. It's a great career, and it's been really great and fascinating talking to you. Thanks so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure, Alex, and I'm sure we'll meet again in the near future.
See you at the Creme.
See you later.
Thanks, Derek. I've stopped that there. That's brilliant. That doesn't need any editing. That's perfect. Yeah.
Okie dokie.